What's the deal with BCDEdit? A deep dive into boot configuration management. When you start your Windows PC, it runs several processes before showing the login screen. And if something goes wrong, you can troubleshoot with safe mode, recovery options, and/or BCDEdit. BCDEdit is a command line utility that allows you to take control of your system's boot configuration data, BCD. You can use it to tweak startup settings, repair corrupted boot entries, and even manage multiple operating systems. While a powerful tool, a misstep could cause critical issues and leave your system unbootable. Before we begin, subscribe to Ninja One IT Tech Tips for more helpful content like this. So why would you need to mess with BCDEdit sometimes? Here are a few situations when it can be useful. Fixing boot problems. If Windows is unable to start, BCDEdit can help you enable safe mode and fix corrupted boot configurations. You may also opt to rebuild the entire BCD Store. Running multiple operating systems. BCDEdit lets you manage boot entries if you're dual booting Windows with another OS or several Windows versions. Fine-tuning startup behavior. You can control which drivers and system files load. In this scenario, you can also adjust the default OS selection and tweak other boot-related settings. BCDEdit is your go-to tool when Windows needs a minor fix or a full-scale intervention. Essential BCDEdit commands you should know. BCDEdit hosts several commands either when you're getting help, managing the BCD Store, configuring boot entries, modifying boot manager settings, and even debugging and recovery. Getting help. When it comes to asking for help, you may view all available BCDEdit commands by typing. BCDEdit isn't exactly beginner-friendly, so it's recommended to know how to pull up command details. If you need more details on a specific command, use Managing the BCD Store. Now, managing the BCD Store would need a separate group of commands. Your boot configuration data lives in the BCD Store. Knowing how to back it up and restore it can be a lifesaver. To create a fresh BCD Store, use to back up your current configuration. And if things go sideways, you can restore your backup with. You can also point BCDEdit to a different BCD Store if needed. These commands keep your boot settings safe and sound. Managing boot entries. If you're running multiple OS installations or need to fine-tune your boot options, managing boot entries is the key. To see all boot entries on your system, type. To add a new boot entry, use. To remove an entry. And if you want to duplicate an existing entry, simply type. Modifying boot manager settings. On the other hand, you may tweak your boot manager settings. This is where you control which operating system boots by default and how long you have to choose. To see your default operating system, run. You can also adjust the timeout if you need more time to choose with. To rearrange your boot order, use. And if you want to boot into a specific OS just once, these commands customize your boot experience exactly how you want it. Debugging and recovery. Risks can happen, so debugging and recovery options for your settings can be helpful. If you're stuck in a boot loop or Windows just won't start, these commands can save the day. To boot into safe mode, type. Sometimes boot records can be corrupted, so you can rebuild them with. And if something isn't working right, reset boot manager settings like this. These troubleshooting steps can get your system working again when things go wrong. BCDEdit in multi-boot setups. If you're running multiple operating systems, BCDEdit is essential to manage how your system boots. You may switch between Windows, Linux, or different options of Windows. However, there are a few things to keep in mind. If you're installing multiple operating systems, install Windows first. Linux installers usually recognize Windows, but it's not always the other way around. Different firmware modes can complicate dual booting. Make sure your settings match across all OS installations. Also remember to back up everything before making changes. Always save a backup of your BCD Store in case something goes sideways. Fixing boot issues with BCDEdit. If your PC isn't booting correctly, BCDEdit can help diagnose and fix the problem. Here are the recommended steps to fix it. Open command prompt as administrator. Run this to check existing boot entries. Look for any missing or incorrect entries. Use either of these to fix them. Restart and cross your fingers. Now, things can get more complicated than you think. At this point, you might need to rebuild the BCD store from scratch. Back up the current store. You may opt to use delete the old store by running. Create new entries and configure them. Restore from backup if necessary by executing BCDEdit in virtual machines. BCDEdit also works inside virtual machines, VMs, just like it does on physical systems. However, there are a few things to keep in mind. Make sure that your firmware is matched. Your VM's BIOS/UEFI settings should align with your boot configuration. Another would be to keep it simple. VM boot setups can get messy, so avoid overcomplicating things. It is recommended to use snapshots. Before changing anything, take a VM snapshot so you can roll back if needed. For advanced uses. If you'd like to delve deeper, BCDEdit can also help with the following: debugging and performance optimization by adjusting boot parameters to troubleshoot system issues. You may also do scripting by automating boot configuration tasks with batch scripts or PowerShell. However, there are security implications. Be careful, as changing boot settings can disable security features like Secure Boot and BitLocker. Remember that only users with administrative privileges can modify the BCD store. BCDEdit is extremely useful but requires careful use. If you understand it well, it can fix boot issues, customize startup settings, and manage multi-boot setups. However, changing values without understanding them can render your system unbootable. Before you delve in, make sure you've backed up your data, double-checked your commands, and if everything else fails, have a recovery USB handy. No one likes a bricked PC. For more information about boot configuration data, click the blog post linked below.